Break the Ice podcast is presented by Superfood. If you have a high-performance team that needs fueling, check out mysuperfd.com for more information. Hey everyone, Mike Vogel here. Welcome to another edition of Break the Ice, joined this time by Caps Assistant General Manager Ross Mahoney as we do our typical early July thing, breaking down the Caps haul from the recently completed 2024 NHL Draft. And Ross, first, this time around, I'd like to start with your impressions of the overall vibe and the venue sphere in Las Vegas. This was very different, I thought, from any previous NHL draft. So just all the players and aside, your thoughts on the venue and kind of the pomp and circumstance of the whole thing.
Yeah, actually, I thought the venue was quite unique, even right from usually the stages at the end of the a rink when we have our normal draft, and the stage was right in the middle, and you kind of had the tables all around it, and the crowd was on the one side, not all the way around, and you could see the crowd up really high, but tremendous venue. Yeah, I mean, it's unbelievable. Some of the things I saw, like actually a little bit of an overload at the very beginning with the lights and the pictures of all the players, and but it was really good.
It's definitely a little vertigo-inducing at times to look up and see the scroll that they did. I thought they did a fantastic job of getting all the data on the screens and everything. It was kind of fun. Now on to the business at hand. You came home with 8 players, the most since 2012 when you brought 10 players back from Pittsburgh, and you guys were, as always, generous to let us watch your mock preparation the day before, and it just drives home that you guys know exactly what you're doing. You essentially predicted the way that would play out, just different names and different slots. But this was one of those drafts too where it seemed like after Celebrini, the next 15, 20 players were pretty well known. It was just a matter of where they're going to slot in, and that's to be expected given the subjectiveness of the whole process.
Yeah, it was interesting. A lot of times I can probably predict who the number 2 person's going to be, in the 3, 4, 5, that sort of thing. But this year we had no idea who was even going to go 2. But you're right, it was the same group of players, up to about 14 or 15, just in different orders, I guess.
And it seemed like you guys were pretty confident that you were going to get somebody that you like there at number 17. And Terk Paras is your choice. Comes out of the Western League. Had a tremendous season at the age of 17 with Prince George, and he played with Zach Funk. 2 of those kids put up 100 goals together, and you bring them both into the organization here at the same time. Going forward, you can't really expect a whole lot of numerical increase in his age 18 season, but what are you looking for Terk in terms of development in this year and the years ahead before he gets to Washington?
I think, as you said, he had a tremendous year. I think he might have had 46 goals.
43, I think.
43. Yeah. Only 12, I think, were on the power play. I think he was 3rd or 4th in the league in shorthanded goals. He might have had 4.
He was 4th.
And played on a very good team. I think going forward, goals for him would be to continue to be able to produce. And I know that sounds hard to do, but Andrew Crystal did it last year too. He had big numbers the year before, and still, had a very good year offensively. But work on a 200-foot game also. Make sure that you're improving in all areas of the ice, not just offensively, because we know he's got that touch. Work hard off the ice, get himself stronger, be even more effective in one-on-one battles. Be able to hold his position in front of the net, or be a little more successful coming out of corners with pucks just due to the physical play. So I think those would be, goals for him. Also help his team, again, to be a very good team again this year. I would hope that he'd be setting his sights on trying to make Canada's World Junior team in the next year or 2 also. So I think those are goals that he would have, for himself, and we expect those also.
He sounds like a guy who gets to the net a lot, and I mean that's where the goals are scored more so than ever before. I feel like at this stage. How are his hands as far as like deflections and that in front? Because if a guy's willing to go there, you like to see him do that sort of Chris Kreider type of dirty work in front. And
Yeah, no,
Caught a lot of goals that way.
He's got a really good stick, and he always seems to be tipping pucks, kind of like TJ Oshie.
Yeah.
You see TJ around the net, and he's got a good shot. He's got good moves also, but he always seems to get his stick on pucks. And he's very unselfish. As I said, he needs to get stronger, but there's no fear in his game at all. I mean, he's willing to go to those dirty areas to try to score goals where sometimes, kids that are offensive may stay on the perimeter a little bit, but he doesn't, and they even played him on a lot on the bumper on the power play, and they also had him a lot on the net front. And when you're net front, you're taking a lot of abuse from the defenseman, but he hung in there. Like I said, always managed to get rebounds or get a stick on pucks.
When you guys went to Vegas for the draft, you had 1 second-round pick in your quiver, and I mentioned to some guys, Jimmy, people that I was sitting around at the draft, that to look for you guys to move up early in day 2, because I feel like that's something you guys typically do. You go home after round 1, see who's out there, and if there's a guy you really like, you'll use some draft capital to climb up and get him. This was similar to that, only you dealt Mac dealt Beck Malensine to Buffalo in exchange for a second-round pick, which is a pretty good trick given that Beck was picked in the 5th round 8 years ago, whatever it was. So nice return on that deal. And then you use that pick to take Cole Hudson, who's the younger brother of Lane Hudson. And Lane just matriculated from BU to Montreal after 2 years, I think, at BU. And now his brother seems to be kind of just literally following in his steps, going to go right to BU. How do you see the progression of Cole Hudson here? He had an amazing season as an under-18 player for the development program last year.
Yeah, I mean, Cole has excellent feet. It's like he skates on top of the ice. Lateral movement is really good. With the puck, he doesn't slow down at all. I want to say with the CHL prospect testing and also the All-American game prospect testing, he was the number 1 skater out of everybody. So I think that really shows his skating ability. Really intelligent player, has excellent hands. We look to see him as a player who could be quarterback on a number 1 power play. And you're right, he is following his brother's footsteps, and I think he will step into BU this year and probably quarterback the power play right away, as did his brother when he first went into university.
Which is kind of crazy to think about when you're an 18-year-old kid. I think he turned 18 the day. Like if he had been taken in the first round, he would have been selected on his 18th birthday. What are the perils of an 18-year-old making that jump? What do you look for when someone's going from that USHL development program up to a big college program at that age? Because typically we've seen over the last few years a number of those college players, they might be 19 or 20 when they're going into that situation.
Yeah, a lot of the players that end up getting drafted in the draft, a lot of them will go back and play in the USHL for a year or two, because the colleges want them to come in probably as 19 or 20-year-olds and be able to contribute right away. But I think this shows how good Cole is. His challenge will be to get himself stronger physically and to be able to play against some of those 23 and 24-year-olds that are in college. But he has the will and he has the drive for sure. So I'm sure he'll have a real good summer of training off the ice, and like I said, get himself a little bit stronger and be able to play in all ends of the rink. And
it seemed if there was one common thread, and you just alluded to it, between most of the prospects that you guys came home with, it's hockey sense and that competitive drive. That seemed to be prevalent in a lot of the kids that you pulled. And that's true of the next guy we're going to talk about, Leon Mugli from Switzerland, who took a similar career path to Jonas Siegenthaler, another guy that you guys did move up to grab in the second round some years ago. What stands out to me, though, both of these guys in their age 17 years, Siegenthaler and Mugli, played in the Swiss League against men. Mugli put up some better offense. Seems like he's a little bit more of a well-rounded two-way guy, where Jonas is a pretty effective stay-at-home NHL defenseman.
Yeah, Leon is, as you said, is a very good two-way player. An excellent skater also. pretty heady player. I think he's really responsible, not just with the puck, but away from the puck. I think he also had the most points of any 17-year-old defenseman in the history of the Swiss Elite League, which I think speaks very highly for him when you think of players like Roman Josi and those type of players that have come through there, defensemen. So I think also, watching him this year that he's got even more offense than he's shown. I think when he was playing for Switzerland, he was the captain of the team, the under-18 team. I think he had to really be responsible defensively, and maybe that took away from his ability to show even more offense.
Well, that's good that he recognized that. That's a sign of maturity, too.
Yeah.
I thought one of the coolest moments of the whole draft was in the second round when you guys made a deal with the New Jersey Devils, to slide up and take Ilia Protus, obviously the younger brother of Alexei Protus, who we all know and love. Kid who's really coachable, Alexei, and you got to figure that the younger kid, and it was interesting talking to Ilia that there's a 5-year difference between the two. They've never played on the same team. They only practice together. It'd be really neat a few years down the road to see both of them in the lineup here at the same time. But I mean, Ilia's similar in that he's a really big body, probably still growing, and you guys dealt with a little bit of that with Alexei. He's much more of a finished product than he was when you called his name in Vancouver in 2019. How is that? Because we're going to get to that with your 7th round pick too. That player who's really big but still growing at the age of 18, and how do you evaluate those guys when they're still sort of growing into that body, because the body itself is still growing?
Yeah, no, it's projection, and I think that's something that scouts learn over time, being able to project what they're going to be like when they're 23 or 24 years old. But you look at a player like that with his size, he's probably 6'4.5", I think, but the hockey sense is excellent. The hands are really good, just like his older brother. And you know that he's going to fill out and he's going to get stronger, which will make him even more effective and make his skating even better than it is. So you just have to be patient with those big kids. I remember myself, I think I was 5'10" when I was 17, and I was awkward and, felt a little bit, like I said, felt a little bit awkward. So it's patience is a thing that you really have to, think about when you draft some of these taller, more gangly type players when they're 17 years old.
Do you expect him to be back in Des Moines this year or back in the USHL?
He's got different options. He's got a university. I know the Canadian Hockey League. I'm getting a lot of calls and text messages here in the last day and a half. They have their
draft coming
import draft tomorrow. So, he's got the options, and I'm sure that he's working through those with his family and with his agent or advisor. I know he did say that it worked out really good for his brother when he had played in Prince Albert. So I think he is considering the CHL too, not just college.
It definitely worked out for Alexei up there, and he's still got an amazing relationship with his billet family as well. And then you had a second pick there in the 3rd round. Took left wing Eriks Mateo, a Latvian kid who's played a couple of years at St. John there, for a team that's scuffled. And I feel like that's another area that you guys over the years have been able to really suss out some kids who maybe I don't know, just didn't get seen in the same light that maybe they should have. Mike Green comes to mind, playing for a pretty rugged Saskatoon team when you guys drafted him. A couple others over the years, but. What do you see from Eriks Mateo that made him appealing there at I think it was 90 or 90 overall?
Yeah, 6'5", 215 pounds.
Another sizable kid.
Plays center and wing. Good skater already. With his size, he's a really good skater. Unselfish player. Assistant captain. Showed some good leadership ability, and I think you're right. St. John was a team that was in a bit transition, so. Not having the best year. And I think sometimes those kids maybe don't get the value isn't as high as it should be on them. It's hard when you're playing on a team that struggles and maybe not getting as many opportunities offensively. You're not playing with the same, kind of group of 5 on a power play that you would on a good team. And you're right with in the past. I mean, we had Braden Holtby's numbers weren't very good in Saskatoon in his draft here, but they were a rebuilding team also. And I think you play the game a little bit different. Mike Green, as you said, I think his draft year they might have won 8 games, and Mike was playing like 35, 40 minutes a game and trying to do way too much because he was trying to help his team. And so I think as a scout, you have to really look at the environment that they're in and the circumstances. And, if you're looking at points, I think Eric's was almost a point a game, but I'm sure on a better team he would have been, even more, had even more points. He played for Latvia in the World Junior, which, he's not playing for Canada or the U.S. or Sweden, and it kind of more the upper echelon teams will save the World Junior tournaments. So once again, I think maybe he wasn't as valued as he should have been, but our guys really like him a lot, and really glad we had a chance to call his name out.
It sounded like he got off to a good start, and then his center got dealt. And so his second half maybe wasn't as impressive. But his body obviously is more NHL ready than some of the other kids that you drafted that are even the same size. What do you look for progression-wise from him? I think he's got, I don't remember his birthday, if he's got 1 or 2 years left.
Yeah, he'll be back playing in St. John.
For sure this year.
And then we'll see from there. But expect him to be even better at the World Junior Tournament. He can play again for Latvia. There was a possibility last year, too, that he might have played in the Men's World Championship, but he kind of hurt his shoulder towards the end of the year, and maybe that helped, too, as far as the Capitals being able to get him, because he did have an injury towards the end of the year. And, so we expect him to have a real good year this year. He was, as I said, he was an alternate captain last year on his team, so I think that speaks for his character also.
And then in the 4th round, you guys grabbed a goaltender. And historically, you guys have done all right with 4th-round goaltenders. Braden Holtby in 2008, Philip Grubauer 2010. And we'll see about Mitchell Gibson, too, another 4th-rounder from 2018 who signed an extension to stay in the organization yesterday. But Nick Kemp playing at the development program as well, and behind a little bit of a suspect defense from what I understand there this year. But you mentioned his athleticism, and again, that comes back to that you guys typically lean toward those athletic goaltenders. We've seen it, Varlamov, Neuvirth, Holtby, etc. over the years. What are the things he needs to fine-tune or hone? And he's headed to Notre Dame. He'll be here this week at development camp, but he's headed to Notre Dame in the fall. Another 18-year-old who's ready to step onto a college campus. So again, impressive enough to land a spot on a pretty good program at the age of 18.
Yeah, the Notre Dame program is an excellent program. They've had some real good success developing goalies also, so we like that situation. Really athletic goalie. I know our U.S. scouts, Jeremy Browning and Rich Alger and A.J. Taves really liked him a lot. And then Daryl Bumgartner, Western Hockey League scout, kind of / goalie guru scout, who really thought highly of him. And then we always involve our NHL, goalie coach, Scott Murray, and also our American League goalie coach in the process. And he checked boxes for everybody. So we thought we were really fortunate to get him in the 4th round. Good size, athletic, focused. I think he reads the play really well. I think sometimes, being good, a little bit better positionally, can get caught sometimes a little bit outside of the post when he's moving back towards the net. But we're really happy with him. And as you said, we like athletic goalies, and he checks that box for us.
As you're monitoring goaltenders through their progression up the ladder, how different is it where you've got a guy like Holtby who's playing in the CHL versus a guy like Grubauer who's playing in Europe versus a guy like Kemp who's going to be playing collegiately, versus how much of a hand you guys actually have in that development before they actually turn pro?
Yeah, you know what? Our development team, especially Ole Kolzig, but Steve Richmond and Brooks Warpick, Jim Slater, they'll go out and see him a lot, and you have the opportunity. I mean, you develop relationships with the coaches, and whether they're in college or over in Europe or junior or the USHL, and you develop those relationships, and you're able to go into to work with them also, and to help out. And so we're happy with it. Like I said, where he is at Notre Dame, and I know Ole will do an excellent job with him.
And you traded your 5th-round pick as part of the price to move up and get Protus. But then in the 6th round, and this is the guy that we somehow neglected to ask you about after the draft, Peter Sikora, not to be confused with either of the 2 previous NHL Peter Sikoras, one of whom was briefly in town here. But this guy's a center, played in the Czech Junior League, but also played a handful of games in the men's league last year, I think 22 of them. And this guy sounds like he's a little. He may be the smallest. He certainly is the smallest forward that you guys drafted this year. But sounds like he plays bigger than his size. What can you tell us about him?
Yeah, he does for sure, and he is one of the I guess the smallest forward we drafted. But some of the others were 6'4", 6'5". So
yeah, pretty high bar.
Yeah. I think he's around 5'11".
5'11", 172. I think.
Yeah. Assistant captain of the Czech under-18 team, and he plays hard. He plays a lot bigger than his size. Goes hard to the net, finishes every check. Really competitive player. It really came out too, I think, when they played against the U.S. and against Canada. It seemed like he was the one on his team that really stepped it up, especially in that to be more of a physical presence and I think showed a lot of leadership in those games too. He did play. I think he played about 22 games in Trinitz in the elite league, and obviously played in the juniors. So I think he's got a real good chance of playing the whole year with the men this coming year. Also, a lot of interest in him in the CHL import draft. As I said, a lot of text messages and phone calls coming. But yeah, we think we've got really good value there. He's going to be more of a two-way center that's going to, win face-offs, be hard to play against, probably be more of a penalty killer, very unselfish player also.
How much confidence do you see players like Mugli and like Sikora derive from that ability to play against men? That you see a bunch of guys that'll play 2, 3, 4 games in those leagues, but to stick around for a couple of dozen games means that you're doing something right, and I got to think that bodes well for their career arc once they're moving forward.
Yeah, no, it really does. I mean, especially when you look at Mugli playing as a 17-year-old defenseman. That's one thing to play as a 17-year-old forward and maybe get 4 or 5 shifts a game, but I mean, he played a regular shift, second pair, penalty kill. So I think to be able to play against men at that age speaks for itself, but it also, I think, helps them in the sense that they know how hard they have to work off the ice also, because they have played against the men, and obviously a lot of times they're at a disadvantage in some of those one-on-one battles, physical play. So, but I think it really speeds up their development, and a lot of times some of those kids, if it turns out for them and they end up, being signed by us and coming over, that they spend less time in the American League, just because they've had that opportunity to play against men for 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, Siegenthaler worked out that way.
Yeah.
The last pick. And at the time when you took Sikora, it looked like he was going to be the last pick. And a little bit of a story here, but as the 7th round wore on, we were informed that you guys might be looking for a way back into this thing, and that there might be one more pick to come for the Capitals. So at that point, you look up on the board and you see there's 4 teams in the 7th round that have multiple picks in that round. Vegas was one of them. And then we learned that if the guy that you guys had your eye on was still there, that pick would be, you guys would make a deal to get that pick. And so you did. The player that you wanted was there, shifted a 6th rounder next season to the Vegas Golden Knights for their 7th rounder this year. When in Vegas, roll the dice a little bit, and this seems like a good gamble, but one that'll take a couple of years probably to pay off. Again, this kid, Miroslav Shatan, who is, yes, the son of 1,000-game forward Miroslav Shatan, same name, a guy who had a great career with Edmonton and the Islanders not too long ago. I was stunned to see that he had a son who was old enough to be drafted already. It made me feel old. But this kid's 6'7", 190 pounds. Obviously, another guy who's still got a lot of growing and some filling out to do. But what do you see from him? What's his upside potential?
Yeah, even to begin with, I guess the 7th round, we're hitting that just as hard as we do the first round.
Yeah.
Like last year, we made a trade also to get Antoine Keller, the goaltender who ended up having a really good year. And if you get your list and you still got some players that you think are deserve to be drafted, and then you get after it. And Brian started making calls and more calls and more calls until we had the opportunity to make that trade and to get that pick and to be able to take him. I mean, as you said, 6'7", 17 years old, but skates really well for a player who's 6'7". So, but we're going to have to be really patient, though. I mean, we talk about getting stronger and filling into our bodies, and when you're 6'7", it's going to take a while. But good hockey sense. Obviously, has been schooled really well by his father, as you said, who played in the NHL for a long time, got the long reach. Pretty good on face-offs. So we think he's got that potential to probably, be a very good center in the future for us.
And Miro Sr. is still associated with the Slovakian national team.
Yes,
well.
He was. I think he kind of really became one of the people that are, high up in the Slovak Federation. And I look at the young players that they've had, the Slavkovskis and the Nemeč's, and I think the father was smart enough to be able to hire good coaches for those programs and to be able to take chances on younger players. And, the Slovak teams have done very well in the last few years.
Do you expect him to stay in Europe for his development years?
Yeah, I think he will. I think there's some interest, too, about maybe going to college, but I haven't had a chance to talk to him yet and see what his plans are.
Right, because he was born in the States, so he's essentially a U.S. citizen as well. Yeah. It's interesting, too. You see all the flurry of activity yesterday around the league, bodies going back and forth. It's interesting how many of those players, and some of them coming in here, not that recent, most of them 2015, 2016 draft, a lot of those type of guys were on the move yesterday, whether it was as UFAs or most of them UFAs. But how often do you revisit those drafts? I guess next year it'll be the 17 draft where those guys are scattering around a little bit. I guess talk a little bit about the process of you scout these kids when they're 17, 18 for the draft that year, but you kind of have to keep up on what they're doing and keep that dossier alive, because you never know when the opportunity comes along a few years later to get a guy like Brandon Duhaime or Matt Roy or Taylor Radish into the organization.
Yeah, it's, our job is interesting. It's not like we have a quarterly review where you see how you're doing, or a year-end review. Yeah. It's, you draft these young players, and realistically, you're probably waiting about 5 years to see how they do. Mm-hmm. And so you're always tracking them. And then you go back and look at past drafts, like I said, after 5 or 6 years, and take a look at your list and see who you liked that turned out and who you liked that didn't turn out, and why they didn't turn out. And you try not to make those mistakes again in the future. But it's not just about looking at the ones that didn't turn out. It's who did turn out, and then what did we like about them. And if they have similarities to players in the future draft, then we'll go after them and call their name out also. So it's always a constant evaluation. Plus, you have to try to always keep in mind, too, about the game and how it's changing, whether it's rule changes, which we went through a number of years ago, where we had to kind of adjust our thinking on smaller players, that they can play.
Yeah.
Especially smaller defensemen. All of a sudden there was less hooking and holding, and you couldn't really hold people up in the neutral zone, and so it gave, I think, some of those smaller players a chance to be successful. So you want to stay ahead of the curve there.
It seems like you guys are doing that too. Just looking at the, we talked about it in Vegas last week, you and I, about how this is such an interesting time organizationally. It's a little bit of a crossroads. We know Carlson and Ovechkin have those 2 years left on the contract, but I really like what you guys did as a group here these last couple of weeks to surround those two guys with some really good talent. And to me, it seems like this group of players gives Spencer Carberry a chance to play that type of game, that type of style, that high-paced, quick play, don't think type of game that he wants to play. It seems like these guys are. I think a first-year coach comes in, takes the job. You got to coach what you got, but I think eventually you want to try to have your vision out there on the ice, but you need the right players to be able to do it. And it seems like you guys are able to supply him with that.
Yeah, no, for sure. I thought we got better. After yesterday, without a doubt, I think we're better now. It's a bit of a challenge doing what we're doing. We're kind of trying to get things going on the fly here.
Yeah.
A lot of teams, and we've been through it a long time ago where you have a kind of a total rebuild, but we're not doing that. We're competitive. I mean, we made the playoffs again this past year, and I thought that was a tremendous job by Spencer and the coaching staff. And we're going to have another good year this year. And, I think Brian has been, slowly accumulating all these picks. We've got 3 seconds next year. So we're able to draft some young players, and in time I think they'll be able to slide into the lineup and provide us with some real good young talent.
I think a lot of times fans want to see that total rebuild, but for me, it doesn't seem to. I mean, as you mentioned, it happened here probably 20 years ago, and it took a few years, and probably not as long as I thought it was going to take at that time. But you look at teams, and I don't want to cast any aspersions here, but there's a number of teams out there that have been in that rebuild for a while and are still. It's taken way longer than the 5 years that most people would sort of ascribe to that. But teams like Dallas and teams like Boston that sort of don't do that. For me, their scouts are keeping those programs going, and I feel like that's what's going on here as well.
Yeah, you have to kind of fire on all cylinders. I think you have to draft well to be able to provide that young talent. Yeah, I mean you've got to do a good job with trades. You have to do a good job with free agency. You have to have when you go back to the drafting side of it. I mean you need development also, an opportunity, and we've been doing that. We've been providing these kids great development with our team, and then we're also giving them the opportunity, to start in Hershey and be in a winning environment. And as we know, back-to-back titles, which is unbelievable. I don't care what level you're at to go back-to-back, whether it's in midget or junior or let alone the American Hockey League. I mean, it's our coaching staff down there obviously has done a tremendous job. We put a lot of kids into the lineup this year in Washington throughout the year, and as I said, we made the playoffs. And so I think it's really a combination of all those different departments and people doing an excellent job.
It's the second set of back-to-back titles in a decade and a half too, so it's a very impressive circumstance. Last thing before we let you go, where are you off to next as far as the scouting for the next year's crop, and what's your quick overview of the quality of that 2025 group?
Yeah, I'll leave here at the end of camp and go back home and lose some golf balls. I basically just leased them, I think. And then we've got Canada's Hlinka tryouts in Calgary, Canada's top 40 players for next year's draft. We've got a tournament in Plymouth where, it'll be basically the world junior teams, from Canada and the U.S. and Sweden, Finland. We'll have the Hlinka tournament, which will be played in Edmonton this year in the second week in August. We've got an under-20 tournament over in Europe at the very end of August, so that's going to be the plan as far as scouting for here for the next 6 weeks. And next year's crop looks really good. I think it's going to be very strong in Ontario. It's always strong in the U.S. I think the Swedish upper echelon Swedish players will be a lot better. We went through a draft where not one Swedish player was taken in the first round, which is really an oddity for me.
It's been a while.
Yeah, so I think those the first round pick and that 3 seconds are going to be a lot of fun for the amateur staff next year come draft time.
That's right. Still a lot of draft capital laying out there. I think you guys have 7 picks in the 2025 draft and have most of the, I think, except for maybe the 7th in 26, or maybe all of them in 26. Yeah. Thanks, as always, to Ross Mahoney, one of our favorite shows to do every year. Thanks to Ross for spending some time with us right here on Break the Ice. Superfood Performance Nutrition fuels the Washington Capitals players and staff on and off the ice. Each bite is energy-packed, highly nutritious, and engineered to boost recovery time. When they're not feeding pro athletes, Superfood is bringing the same high-quality nutrition to offices nationwide through their flagship corporate meal program, Simply Lunch. So if you have a high-performance team that needs fueling, check out mysuperfd.com for more information.